Jonathan, I stick my neck out and say this. Have you found any Tory MP who is prepared to stand by the Telegraph's story and say, yes, I definitely heard the Prime Minister say that about the BBC and that about the Archbishop of Canterbury?
Well, good afternoon. It is nice to join you, Alastair. Look, I mean, that story, I think, is in every single British media outlet this morning and today. So if the Prime Minister is shocked to have seen it, I'd suggest he might want to start by, I don't know, asking the Downing Street press operation how that managed to be there. I mean, all of this is a smokescreen for what we know Parliament is deciding today and tomorrow, which is how are the fixed penalty notices that the Prime Minister has been hit with and is paid consistent with what he said in Parliament prior to that he was shocked even at the suggestion that these events may have taken place, and yet now he's been fined for his own attendance at them. I think he's trying to detract from that. I think it's fairly obvious, and I hope we will do what Parliament needs to do in terms of the right process tomorrow. Pass the motion, have the Privileges Committee look into that. I think there are a lot of people on all sides of Parliament think that's and recognise that is the right thing to do. Let's hopefully see it happen tomorrow afternoon.
What's your defence, Jonathan? And I do take that point that maybe Guito Harry and the gang at Number 10 need to look at how such an allegation could get out without denial overnight, but you're absolutely right in that respect. How do you react to the other allegation, and that is that without that, both the debate yesterday and PMQs today makes your leader and your party look like a one-trick pony?
Well, I think let's be clear what we're talking about here. We are talking about, first of all, the issue of whether the Prime Minister has been fined for attending parties is settled. He's paid the fine, right? That's happened. The issue is whether you can look at the things the Prime Minister has said in Parliament at the dispatch box and reconcile those things to what has happened since. And I would just say, I honestly think, and I'm as you probably would expect, a lifelong Labour supporter, well before I was a Labour MP, I would look at other Tory Prime Ministers, you know, Theresa May, David Cameron. I don't think they displayed the same casualness with the facts in Parliament that we see from Boris Johnson. I think it does matter. Integrity matters in any job, but it certainly matters if you're the British Prime Minister. And I think there is simply no way to reconcile what has been said by the Prime Minister and what has happened since. And having that investigated by a Privileges Committee, which has been around for hundreds of years, to be frank, which has a Conservative majority, which is not going to be chaired by a Labour MP, he's recused himself from that process. What's the argument against that proper investigation taking place? I just don't see what the Conservative argument, what the government argument is, against that process being followed tomorrow.
OK, let me change it to another line of inquiry, and it's a genuine one, and it's a point I've made myself on my GBNews programmes time and time again. If your party aspires to government on something that is so important to so many people out there, up and down the country, like migration, if you don't like what Priti Patel and Boris Johnson have proposed, is it not incumbent upon you as a party that aspires to government to come up with a clear, credible alternative?
No, that's an absolutely fair challenge, and I'll answer it for you now. Let me say, first of all, I don't believe this government really is going to send large numbers of people against their will to Rwanda. I think, frankly, if they were going to do that, they would have been able to tell us when they made the announcement in Parliament how much it was going to cost per person, who was going to be affected by it, how many people we're talking about. They haven't got any of that. I think what they want here is the announcement for some sort of benefit they perceive in the local elections of having made it. But the answer to this question is quite simply, be competent as a Home Office. The Home Office today is making half the number of decisions on asylum cases that it was making 5 years ago. In that time, these illegal boat movements across the Channel have massively risen in number. So the answer to this, it's not a sort of eye-catching answer, but it's cooperate with the French in a way which has fallen apart in the last few years, and get on top of your caseload, Home Office. The problem is, I think, is that people come to this country, the decisions don't get done for years and years. They're in a limbo in between where they're building lives in a country where they might not ultimately be given the right to reside in. So get on top of those numbers. And the fact that this Home Secretary cannot do that, wants to spend money on an eye-catching announcement. We've given the Rwandans 120 million with nothing being delivered at this stage. It's for the press release. She needs to get on top of the job, do the job properly, make more decisions, get up to where the Home Office was just a few years ago. That's what would make the difference. But I don't think it's interesting.
Let me finally put something to you, Jonathan, if I may. You drew Priti Patel perfectly reasonably there into your own analysis. Priti Patel accused Yvette Cooper yesterday of saying you have no alternative to this because deep down the Labour Party is an open borders party. You and I are long enough in the tooth to remember the arguments that Tony Blair and Gordon Brown had over that. Immigration is a nightmare because within your party many think open borders is progressive, internationalist, it's the right way to go. Even Gordon Brown in the end had to come out and utter those dreadful words, British jobs for British workers. He hated having to say it, but it's because Labour all those years ago was in as much a mess over immigration as it is right now.
Look, the fact is, there is nobody in the Labour Party who believes in open borders. We want a points-based immigration system not dissimilar to what has been introduced after Brexit. Everyone recognises issues around freedom of movement. They've ended because the Brexit question has ended. I mean, I would say when I talk to a lot of people in my constituency in the referendum, they expressed their concerns about immigration as not being about freedom of movement, being about the total number of people coming. And as you will know, the figures since Brexit are for a substantial increase in immigration from places like Nigeria and the Philippines and India, and they've come instead of European people. So it hasn't essentially been what many people wanted, I think, to happen in terms of the overall outcome. But there's no one in the Labour Party arguing for open borders, and it's lazy from the Home Secretary, rather than give her own MPs, by the way, Conservative MPs asked for information on the costs, because if it's going to be £2 million per person taken to Rwanda, well, I mean, what is that going to add up to overall? They haven't been able to give us costs. They couldn't say if it applied to families, to children. These are the basic things you would know if you were really
sure
about this.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.